We'd like to think of the past as a simpler time, but the family intrigue that surrounds this charming gingerbread-style home in Laconia, New Hampshire is anything but simple. This home was built in 1845 and has 3 bedrooms and just over 2,200 square feet. The earliest property records show Samuel W. Sanders as having owned the home. Samuel was about 22 years old when he arrived in Laconia in 1841, having been born in Mason, New Hampshire in 1819. He was a tin maker and owned many properties in the New Hampshire Lakes region. The first indication we have that Sanders likely built this home is the tin ceiling in the main living room and kitchen. Sanders owned the home until 1861, when it was sold to Augustus and Mahala Doe. Augustus was a 52-year-old farmer in the 1860 census and may have retired upon moving to the home. Augustus sold the home in 1867 to Helen Jameson. Here we can see Helen's deed, where it specifically excludes her husband Joseph as having any claim to the home, a surprising move for a young married woman. So what led Helen to buy this property independently? Helen was born January 1, 1845 in Framingham, Massachusetts, to Levi Nudd, a brickmaster. She married Joseph Jameson on November 13, 1863, at the age of 18. Joseph was a carpenter who was born to Irish and Scottish immigrants in Canada and was 10 years her senior. Within 4 years of marriage, Helen bought this home on her own for $300. In researching women's property rights of the 19th century, laws allowing women to own property in their own right were first introduced in New York State in 1848. But why did Helen feel the need to buy this home without Joseph? It could be to protect the property from debtors who would make claims against him. But perhaps their relationship was volatile and Helen was looking to leave her husband. Maybe he was untrustworthy or had addictions. Unfortunately, we will never know Helen's true motivation, but a deeper look at the Jameson family could reveal some clues. Helen and Joseph welcomed their son Frank on March 11, 1869. It is likely that he was born in this home. Helen, Joseph, and Frank lived in the home for 9 years before Helen passed away in 1876 at the age of 31, leaving a 7-year-old Frank as the owner of the home. There is no death certificate for Helen, so we do not know her exact cause of death, but at such a young age, it was not natural. We will never know if it was an accident or an illness or something more sinister. Frank was the only child born to Helen and Joseph over the course of their 13-year marriage. The 1870 census indicates it was her only pregnancy, which is contrary to the notion that women had numerous children in 19th century America. In fact, the U.S. birth rate dropped to only 3 children per woman by 1900. Given Helen's early death, there may have been medical problems, or perhaps they used the primitive forms of birth control available during the Civil War era. Frank and Joseph continued to live in the home after Helen's death. This undated photograph shows a man and a young boy riding a bicycle on the wraparound porch. I would like to think it is the only known photograph of Joseph and Frank. However, the home pictured next door was built in 1900 when Frank was an adult, so it is likely another father and son who called this home. But whom? Joseph remarried Mary Ware on February 16, 1887, 11 years after Helen's death. Mary was born in Quebec to an Irish immigrant father and immigrated to the U.S. in 1886 at the age of 35. She and Joseph welcomed a daughter in 1890, but apparently there was some confusion. Here we see Mary and Joseph's daughter, Helen Mabel Jameson, born March 31, 1890. This is the exact same name of Joseph's first wife who bought this home. However, on the side, we see that the child was originally recorded as being named Florence, and she was born on April 1, 1890. I believe that Mary wanted to name the child Florence, but was forced to rename her daughter after Helen by either Joseph or Frank, who still had ownership of the home. Naming children after family members is extremely common, but I can't imagine wanting to name my daughter after my husband's deceased first wife. I think this is telling of Mary's role in the family and Joseph or Frank's dedication to Helen. Interestingly, Mary and Joseph also had only 1 child and 1 pregnancy, according to the 1900 census. So once again, we find that the Jameson family was either unable to have or did not want to have many children. Joseph was married for 46 years with 2 different women and only fathered 2 children. On April 21, 1892, Frank married Evelyn Hawkins. Frank worked for the Boston Main Railroad line, which had a stop in Laconia. Just 4 short months later, they had a stillborn baby girl. This was the only child Frank is recorded as having, and it is likely that the child was conceived before marriage, which led Frank and Evelyn to get married hastily. Later that year, Frank transferred ownership of this home to his father Joseph on October 11, 1892. Frank and Evelyn were only married 4 years before she filed for divorce on April 17, 1896 on the grounds of desertion. Frank married Lizzie Sullivan on June 19, 1897. Their marriage record indicates that it is Lizzie's second marriage, but Frank's first, which is untrue, meaning Lizzie may not have known that Frank deserted his first wife. Frank died while living at this home on May 17, 1901 from Bright's disease, which would today be classified as kidney disease, with a head injury listed as a contributing factor. I expect Joseph was devastated by the loss of his son, who, like his mother, died in his early 30s. Perhaps Helen also suffered from kidney problems, which may have contributed to her death. Joseph continued to live at the home with Mary and Helen until his death on March 27, 1920, which was caused by flu-induced pneumonia. His illness was likely related to the 1918 flu epidemic, which swept the nation, eventually ending in the winter of 1920. Mary and Helen took ownership of the home upon Joseph's death and continued to live there with Helen's husband Ralph until 1930, when they sold it to Theodore Jewett, a lawyer who rented it out to various families until 1951. Helen and Ralph never had any children, therefore there were no children living at the home between 1900 and 1930, so we can conclude that it was likely one of these families who rented the home after 1930 depicted in this photograph. The home was sold again in 1967, 1973, and 1976. President Jimmy Carter is reported to have slept at this home during the 1976 Democratic primary. I think the original Helen Jameson would have been thrilled to know that a future president slept in her home. The Jameson family spent decades walking these halls and sleeping in these rooms. Helen, the young mother, gazed outside these windows as she nursed and comforted a newborn Frank as the snow quietly fell in late winter 1869. Joseph, the skilled carpenter, may have connected the main house to the barn to accommodate his family. Mary moved into this home where she may have always felt Helen's presence as she raised her daughter of the same name. And it is in these rooms where Helen, her son Frank, and eventually Joseph took their last breaths. As to the question of who haunts this house, there are many possibilities, but I believe that the first Helen, the pioneering young woman who bought this home in 1867, still roams these halls. And perhaps it was Joseph who felt his first wife's presence, and it was she who compelled him to name his baby daughter after her, in return for giving him a place to rest his head for over 50 years. We may never know, but the most tragic part of their story is that there are no living descendants of Joseph, Helen, or Mary. This house refused to let the Jameson family go forth.